So if you're thinking of going tubeless on your road or gravel bike, there's a couple of things you really need to know first. And I really wish I knew this before I started to do it. Now, first things first, going tubeless and the ongoing maintenance that's needed is just a pain in the ass. It just is. From buying the right one, maintaining it, putting in sealant or replenishers when needed, and then also fixing it when it goes wrong. If you're not somebody that likes tinkering with your bike, don't do it. It's not for you. Just stick a tube in and you'll be absolutely fine. Now, I've been running tubeless for probably, I don't know, close to 2 years. And there's been some ups and downs, shall we say. And the reason I'm here today in the garage is because I need to set up my rear tyre again. So the first thing when you go in tubeless is to probably decide what type of sealant you're going to put in there. And once again, there's a few things that you're going to need to know. Now, the first time that I set a bike up, I used muck off. And to be honest, I got one puncture and it just didn't seal. It didn't work. I've used it a few more times since then, including going back and retrying it again recently, and it still doesn't work. In fact, at this point, I actually want to know, has anybody had a muck off sealant tyre actually seal? Because I swear the stuff doesn't work. I'll never buy it again. I'll never recommend it to a friend. If somebody can prove me wrong and tell me about a time it's worked for them, please let me know, because I don't know. I swear the stuff just never works. And as soon as you get a puncture, you lose all faith in the ability to seal. So you're like, on with the next one. Now, after I tried muck off, I actually went and bought Silka. And we're going to come back to Silka. For a few reasons, I then tried stands and I also tried orange seal. Same as the muck off, I got just small random punctures and they just didn't seal. And the problem is when you've got one that just doesn't seal, you don't want to be going out for a 3-4 whatever hour ride, because you just don't want to deal with putting a tube into a tyre that's full of sealant. It's an absolute mess and it's a pain. So that, unfortunately, in some ways for myself, has brought me back to Silka. Now this stuff, I don't think it should be called sealant, alright? And when you use this stuff, don't think of it as sealant. This stuff is essentially glue. Alright, think of it as glue, treat it as glue, and be prepared to deal with the consequences of using glue, and you'll be absolutely on track. Now, when you're installing this stuff, it's very different than the other brands, and it's a bit of a pain, but at the end of the day, I've had holes in road bike tyres and gravel tyres, and this is the only stuff which has consistently sealed holes for me. And so now this is the only stuff that I'm going to use going forwards. Now, when you are going to install the Silka, one of the main things is you cannot use a syringe to push it through through the valve. Even with the valve core removed, no matter what type of valve it is, if it's one of the high flow muck off ones like I run, you cannot put it through a syringe. Do not try, because as you try and push it through, I know, I tried. The little pieces of carbon fiber which are inside it just clog up the valve, and it essentially will just blow off the valve and it will spray sealant or glue all over the place, and you got to clean it up. So you've got to pour it into the tyre. There's no way around it. Do not try and do it any other way. Now the problem with having to pour it into the tyre is that you're probably going to make a mess and some's going to come out. And if you get this stuff anywhere that isn't on your garage floor or somewhere that nobody else is going to see, it's going to stain. This right here is a mark on some slabs that I did over a year ago, and it is still clear as day stained the slabs no matter what I do, and it is a constant reminder for my wife of anything that I've done wrong. So don't do that. Another thing, get yourself some gloves. Don't put this stuff in without gloves on your hand, because it's just like when you were back at school and you end up with like this PVA glue all over your hands that you've got to just peel off, and it takes forever to come off. Once you've poured it in, I really recommend making sure, well yeah, let's go back. Before you pour it in, if you're doing it for the very first time, seat the tyre without any sealant in there. Now you might find that you struggle to seat the tyre, and it's better to struggle seating a tyre with no sealant in it than it is to struggle with sealant inside it, especially this stuff. So this wheel at the moment has got an inner tube in it. So I'm going to have to take the tube out, and hopefully I can keep an entire side of the tyre still seated on. Doesn't matter if you can only keep say 20% at the top. Try and keep something, because it will make your life so much easier. Also, I've got a pretty good pump with a tank inside it, so I can bang in about 120 psi. I'd really recommend it. Don't bother trying to do it without a floor. With a floor pump, it's gonna go everywhere. So right. This is the tube from the other day that I had to put in after this muck off sealant just didn't seal again. It didn't even seal the tyre overnight. So if it can't even seal the tyre after you first put it on, after you've ridden it and whatnot, that's normally not a good sign. So I've managed to keep on one side of the tyre still seated, so that will help me when it comes to re-inflating it. So hopefully now I can just pull off some of the bottom, open it up, and then just pour in some of the silica. The one thing that muck-off do sell well that works is these high flow iridescent colour valves. These are great. They actually work. Now you don't need much of a gap to be able to pour it in, but just try and give yourself as much room to work with to make your life easier. Give this stuff a good shake. Now you'll notice when you've used this that there's these little black strands, which are the bits of carbon fibre which help seal in case you get a flat. I often find that when I'm pouring this in, it looks like I'm not actually getting any of those black strands in, and they're still staying in the bottle. Honestly, it doesn't matter. This stuff on its own, even without the little black strands, like I said, it's like glue. It will be absolutely fine. Trust me from experience. And as far as how much I'm just going to pour in, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. If they think it's like 40 mil, I err on the side of more. Yeah, just more. I'd rather have a bit more weight in there than get a puncture and not have enough sealant. And because some of the tyre's seated on, you can slosh it around and then get the tyre back on. Oh. Case in point, load of it's just splashed out on the ground. That's okay, because I'm in my garage, and it can do that here. Now let's get some... So I'm going to pump up the tank first. Right, fingers crossed. Happy days. Now what was interesting there is as soon as I put that air in it, I've just found a hole. But the difference with these tyres is it has literally gone straight round and sealed it. Now as soon as you can, wipe this stuff off the wheels and the tyres, or else like the glue that it is, it makes a mess. And give it a swish. Gotta deal with that mess. So yeah, that went on very, very easy, and that's because half the tube was already seated on. So that makes things much easier. Now the first time that you put the sealant in, give it a swish, throw it on the bike, go for a ride around the block, and that should be it. Now I could probably then not use this bike for a day or two, and I would bet money on it that these tyres will not lose air even in that time. This stuff just seals. But what that means is if you are out on the road, wherever, riding gravel, and you get a hole in your tyre, getting these off with silica inside them is a monumental pain in the ass. Like I said, this stuff is glue. Even unseating the tyre off the rim, you will struggle to get it off. You just will. And then once you do get it off, if there's any sealant still inside the tyre, it's just going to make a mess. So if you're running this silica glue, that's what I'm calling it now, put some gloves in your toolbox or tool bag or whatever on the bike. Because if you get this stuff on your hands, it's just so messy to deal with. So that's it. So I'm pretty happy now that that's the end of my tubeless worries. I'm just gonna have to stick with using the silica, and fingers crossed I don't get any more issues. But please let me know if there's any tips or tricks, if there's a sealant that you've tried that you found has worked. I want to know. I seem to go through this stuff lots because I chop and change my tyres all the time. And yeah, if you've had muck off sealant actually work, please tell me, because I think it's an urban legend. Just don't think this stuff works.